In today's video, we are going to be answering some of your amazing questions about the technology series that we've been posting videos for. So thank you for participating and asking these questions, and we're sorry we can't answer them all. First one, I wonder if in the near future, when you realize the extent to which artificial intelligence is intruding into your lives, you will again embrace Amish ways. Did we ever embrace Amish ways to begin with?
Not so long as I've been alive, but...
Okay, so I would say that artificial intelligence is already part of our lives, and for myself, I'm not too principled about it because I use GPS, I use Google Maps, Google Translate, and the list probably goes on.
Yeah, and I think those things are positive, and they're actually pretty routine at this point. We don't even really, I wouldn't necessarily even have thought of them as artificial intelligence because they're so integrated into how we do things. You know, another part of artificial intelligence that I was amazed at the other day, we were doing a Facebook live stream of our worship meeting on Sunday. It's a thing we do now. And what was cool was how the video was transcribed and subtitled in real time, and the speech recognition was just super accurate, which just a few years ago was not the case. So that's a neat thing.
I've said this before, but if there were no GPS devices, I would probably just be lost all the time or stay at home a lot more, which might not be the worst thing. I think the questioner here may be more interested in the question of machines completely replacing human beings, don't you think?
Yeah, and I think we actually have some similar questions a bit further down the list, which we'll get to. But first, here's an easy one. There are no TVs in the Bruderhof. Where did you watch Wall-E? Okay, so we don't have TV or screens in our homes for the most part, but we do have them available to watch things we're interested in. But we try to apply the principles we've been discussing in this series and, minimize consumption of entertainment media, not make it like the main part of our lives or something we do hours of every day. And I, at least personally, get more out of reading or listening to audiobooks at this point. But, what's your most recent favorite show or movie?
That's a good question because my viewing habits are kind of dependent on the weather. So in the summertime, I would say I really haven't seen much in the way of that type of entertainment. Mm-hmm. But I was talking to my sister the other day, and she came across this show. I'm not sure when it was released, but it's called Upload. And I think it kind of ties into this conversation because essentially the premise, what I understand of the show, is human beings are given the opportunity to upload their consciousness into the afterlife. So that's corporatized and digitized, and it's peddled as a comedy, but it really actually sounds like a nightmare. And it just goes to show how human beings are currently viewing life. There's no longer distinctions between what is tangible and real versus what is artificial. So it's like if Amazon Prime had one of their options was the afterlife, that's just so creepy and totally not what we as Christians would give any credence to, right?
It's kind of like a virtual cryogenics. And that's the obsession, especially among the super wealthy now, right? So Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, the quest is for eternal life. But as Christians, we are assured that our lives actually already are eternal. So that's something I think...
It's hopeful.
It's hopeful.
Yeah.
Even if, our physical lives are 70, 80 years, but we do believe that our lives are forever, so.
Yeah. So here's another question, Rich. What's your view on the scamdemic?
Scamdemic?
Scamdemic. I said scamdemic. Are you ready to get your mark, become transhuman, or will you stay as God's creation? The lines have been drawn. Who can make war with the beast?
Ooh.
Okay, so I think this is referring to a theory that has traction in some circles that the coronavirus epidemic was created and spread in order to advance the aims of some shadow group of
the Illuminati.
Yes, wealthy, powerful people trying to gain more power and influence. At least one of the theories is that the coronavirus vaccine will contain a chip, which is somehow connected to the 5G network that will allow this shadow group to control people in various ways. And some believers in this theory link the chip to the mark of the beast, described in the book of Revelations. I don't find this at all persuasive. Maybe I'm too optimistic, but this might be a way that some people are trying to make sense of this crazy world and the craziness of coronavirus.
So you mean I'm not going to need my tinfoil hat anytime soon?
You can probably go ahead and just cook something in it at your next campfire.
I like doing the potatoes in tinfoil. Very tasty. Okay, here's another question. Does the Bruderhof have a position on the use of implantable microchips that will be used for buying and selling, and in particular how they might be related to biblical prophecy and the mark of the beast, i.e. a mark that people will need to have in their right hand or in their forehead and without which they cannot buy or sell? Okay, another reference to Revelations. And I don't think the Bruderhof, well, I know the Bruderhof doesn't actually have a position on this type of interpretation of Revelations. I think that's it's shaky ground to be on, and some things we're just not meant to know, and we can, be content not knowing things. But from my perspective, the idea of implanting microchips in people is extremely suspect, and it's obviously prone to misuse and invasions of privacy, which is not cool. And I don't think I or anyone on the Bruderhof would go along with having microchips implanted anywhere in us. But that said, many of us do happily and voluntarily carry around microchips in our pockets every day, our phones, and we don't think much about it. So, who knows? Luckily, the question is an issue we have not had to contend with yet. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
We'll have to. So what are your thoughts on those who, for no reason of their own making, will find themselves jobless in the days to come? Will other jobs just appear as they have done before when momentous events just change the direction that society moved in? That's a great question, and I think it's also very sad, and actually it's really an urgent policy question that needs addressing alongside the challenges of climate change, which, by the way, is related to our over-intensive use of Earth's resources. I was intrigued to see how far Andrew Yang got in the Democratic primary on the idea of universal basic income, which was such a fringe idea a few years back, and I'm not at all sure that it would be successful, but at least it made the conversation about universal basic income more mainstream. But ultimately, from the Anabaptist perspective, better policy can help alleviate suffering, which is important and we should care, but it can't solve human nature. So this sort of problem will always persist, and it's only in a society where people can truly care for each other and go the extra mile that these problems will go away completely, also related to the kingdom of heaven. That's what that is. So it's really only possible with God's intervention, and it's what we're trying to live towards here at the Bruderhof.
I think that's absolutely right. Another thing I would say, if you look at the history of technological innovation, it's often been disruptive to the workforce. But then there's always been retraining and restructuring in the economy, and then people find new work to do. Having said that, who's to say that this will always be the case? And one thing I personally wonder about in relation to this is, when are we going to come to the end of this constant obsession with economic growth? It's actually the main driver for automation. And when are we going to actually be happier, learn to be happier with less? We're going to have to be. And I think we would be happier with less. I've seen it. And that would also mean finding satisfaction in doing work by hand that could have been done faster and on a bigger scale with machines, like, for example, farming. But then finding reward in the process, doing things by hand. I know it's easy to romanticize things like this and look to the past and think how pleasant and pastoral it was to work on the land. But it is something I personally feel somewhat drawn to.
Absolutely. So the next question is actually two questions for us. When we reach the singularity, robots will have consciousness like humans, and this person says that this will happen sooner rather than later. But what then? Will God be there for them? And then part two of the question is, imagine a future where this happens. The machine would be smarter than us, able to make itself even smarter to levels unimaginable to us. What if the secrets of the universe were unlocked, everything revealed, and no mysteries in the world of scientific advancement? What would life be like? Wow, that's a great question, and I think it's not at all settled that we're ever going to see technological singularity in terms of computers actually having real agency or that real human intelligence. Like Steven Pinker said, just because you can imagine it isn't evidence that it's likely or even possible. Having said that, I believe God created everything, and that would include the brains of computer scientists who are working on developing different forms of artificial intelligence. So actually, God is in control of artificial intelligence, if you want to look at it that way. Of course, that doesn't mean he would sanction the use of it for evil purposes, but since he's the creator of everything, it just wouldn't be possible for anything in his creation to be greater than him. And we, as his image bearers, which robots are not and never will be, can take comfort in that.
Mm-hmm. And to the second part of the question, mankind has been learning about the world forever. In Genesis, Adam was given the task of naming all the animals and plants, and to this day, we're still learning amazing things, and we'll continue to learn them. And I don't think we're ever going to come to the end of wonder. Actually, the more that's discovered, the more there is to wonder at, and that's really a beautiful thing. That's where science and Christianity meet, is in wonder. So those are all great questions. Thank you very much for watching our videos and engaging with us, and look forward to the next series. See you around.